Hello, and welcome to Weekend Wisdom, a podcast of creatingafamily.org. I'm your host, Tracy Whitney, and every weekend we answer your questions about adoption, foster care, kinship care, also called relative caregiving. If you have a question that you think would fit this short, practical podcast format, please send it to us. You can send it to info@creatingafamily.org. We will check our archives, we'll get info from experts that we've talked with in the past, and we'll bring you answers that we hope will strengthen your family. Today's question comes from TJ. My husband and I are considering whether we will open our special needs list consideration to include children who are HIV positive. We've already been approved to adopt from India, and as our home study update approaches, we are taking a good hard look at that list again. Thank you. Well, TJ, thank you so much for reaching out. It is a great question, and I'm happy to share a few resources and thoughts that we think will help your family navigate that special needs checklist. I remember how overwhelming that special needs checklist can be, and I understand that the need to thoughtfully consider it and then reconsider it is a good way to approach your international adoption process. So we recently interviewed Dr. Dana Johnson from the University of Minnesota. He is the founder of the International Adoption Clinic there at the University of Minnesota. And he shared with us in that interview that the incidences of HIV in international adoption have drastically reduced in recent years. And because of new and more effective treatments, better access to medicines and care, and increased education, more prospective parents are feeling equipped and educated to pursue kids in those countries who do have HIV. And when they are completing their special needs checklists, they are more open to the option. So we have a few things to recommend to you, and we think that they might help you think through the possibility of raising a child that's HIV positive. And keep in mind through this process, there is no right or wrong answer. You have to ask yourself some hard questions, but then you have to answer those questions as honestly as you possibly can to be prepared for whatever child you say yes to, and so that your child feels safe and welcome and well cared for in your home. You can also run these questions by your caseworker and ask the caseworker to kind of hash through them with you. You don't say what agency you're using or how connected or involved your caseworker is with you at this point in the process, but it's worth a phone call and certainly kind of examining some of the things that these questions might prompt, because sometimes asking a couple questions leads to asking a couple more questions, and that's pretty common. And you can use it as an exercise to help you think through things clearly. So the first question to ask yourself is, are you willing and do you have the time and capacity to become informed about the realities of raising a child with HIV or AIDS? One of the most important things that you need when you are raising any child with special needs is a sense of ongoing education, a sense of learn and keep learning. And so educating yourself about a chronic illness like this is a must, and it takes time and intentionality. It's not something you can kind of just, get to when you get to. So the second question that you could ask yourself is, do you have the medical resources and access to those resources near you that specialize in the treatment of HIV or AIDS? You should consider access not just to the pediatric resources in your region, but also how they transition kids from pediatric care to adolescent to adult care. You want to see an organization that has a continuum of care. You want to look for care providers that are keyed into the needs and concerns of kids as they grow, and how to help those kids advocate for themselves, how to help them learn to educate themselves as they grow. So it's kind of a continuum of care that you're looking for. And do they take a team approach to this process of caring for all of the needs that come with HIV or AIDS? You're going to want to also think about, do you have to go to several different facilities to get the care? Or do they have an umbrella approach where all of the care is available in one facility? Those are questions, again, no right or wrong answer, but these are things that you need to consider, considering your availability, your access, and how willing you are to travel, or if you have the ability to travel, how that fits on your calendar, those kinds of things. The third kind of round of questions to ask yourself is, are you organized and disciplined enough to make sure that your child takes their medication on time, gets to doctor's appointments as regularly as they need to, and so on? In particular, with kids who have an HIV or AIDS diagnosis, the medication routine may not be complex, but it does require consistency. And if you are a family that struggles with that kind of consistency, you want to think about how to improve that, or if you're capable of that. And speaking of handling things in an organized or consistent, disciplined manner, do you have the ability to organize the time demands that a child with a chronic illness might require? Your learning curve will be steep and consuming. You may feel like you have the capacity for that when they first come home. However, AIDS is often most well controlled with medication and regular medical care. And so the long haul of ongoing evaluations, revisiting medication, changing medication protocols, and all of that requires consistency, again, discipline and organization to handle all of the doctor's appointments and sometimes unexpected doctor's appointments that happen in the process of caring for a child with any chronic illness. Are you prepared for the impact that that might have on your calendar, work demands, other family demands, and so on? The fifth question is a little bit of a sticky wicket because things are changing, and that's a good thing. But have you considered the negative stigma that continues to surround children with this virus? Again, things are changing. It's not quite as stigmatized as it was, many years ago. However, you have to be willing to advocate for this child. You have to be willing to educate the child to learn how to advocate for themselves. And there are still, unfortunately, uninformed individuals out there, even local professionals who may not have had exposure to or cared for individuals with HIV or AIDS. And so it's helpful to think through how you might educate yourself so that you can educate others, how you might educate yourself so you can educate your child, and then learn the self-advocacy for your family and teach the child self-advocacy for the things that might be a little more intangible than medical care, meaning stereotypes and bias and stigmas that go around some of that care. So that one's a little tougher to think through, but it's a valid conversation to have with your partner or with your care providers and how to prepare for that. So number 6 is pretty practical. It's in terms of talking with care providers and school and things like that. Who are you going to tell about this child's status? By law, families are not required to disclose HIV status at daycares or schools or child care providers. However, you may choose to share this information for any number of reasons, and you should talk with your caseworker what would be the reasons to share or not to share. And think about the advantages and disadvantages of disclosure before you bring that child home. And number 7, it's always frightening to bring home a child with a chronic illness. And you have to ask yourself, are you able to push back those fears for the sake of the child and open your heart to both the joys and the challenges that would come with raising a child who has HIV or AIDS? Can you hold space for that scary diagnosis while also remembering that the child is not their diagnosis? This condition is just one part of who that child is, and they deserve to be fully seen. And so asking yourself if you have that ability or if you're willing to grow that ability. Number 8, ask yourself if you are in relationship with other parents who are raising kids with chronic illness. It doesn't necessarily have to be other parents raising kids with HIV or AIDS, but parents who are raising kids with chronic illness will get it. They'll understand what you're going through. They'll be able to share their experiences thus far. They'll be able to support you when you're feeling kind of unfounded and kind of unfettered. If you have anyone in your life that is living with an HIV diagnosis, it would be great to kind of pick their brain a little bit and see if they're willing to share with you what is helpful and what is maybe challenging. If you're willing to seek out folks who grapple with the everyday of chronic illness, and willing to put yourself in relationship with those people and learn from them, this could be a great opportunity for you to build a support network if you do decide to say yes to a child with HIV. It's really, really important when you're raising a child with complex special needs, chronic illnesses. It's really important that you surround yourself with support. The good news about adopting from India is that typically kids are screened from HIV and other blood-related illnesses, and their files are quite thorough. So it's not like you would be surprised by anything. You would know going into it. And India is one of the countries listed in our top 10 sending countries chart over at the adoption comparisons chart. And I'll link that chart for you in the show notes. I think there's a lot of really valuable things to learn about adopting from India in that chart. And there's some great communities for you to join once you're part of an adoptive community from India. So TJ, I hope this answers your questions. I hope it is okay that we gave you a ton more questions to ask and think through. I think the thought exercise of asking yourself hard questions and then honestly answering them is really valuable when you're bringing home a child with a chronic illness or ongoing complex medical needs. If you can ask yourself these questions and adapt that learn and keep learning mentality, keep honest, open communication between you and your partner, you and your caseworker, you and the child, as they're learning how to be part of your family, you'll find the right path forward and thriving together. If there are kids already in your home, again, keep that communication open with them and keep talking. And please feel free to check us out at facebook.com/groups/creating a family to find other families who've adopted from India and other families who've adopted kids with chronic special needs or ongoing illnesses. And you'll find some support there in that community. So good luck and keep us posted. We hope to hear from you some good news about whoever joins your family. Listeners, if today's conversation was helpful to you, not just about HIV, but maybe living with and considering a child with chronic illness or long-term diagnoses, we would love to hear from you. Leave us a rating or a review wherever you caught today's episode. And thank you so much for listening today.